You are listening to the Hemp Beverage News Podcast, brought to you by the Hemp Beverage Expo, the only trade show in the space connecting brands with the retailers, suppliers, and distributors they need. Join us to hear from the people building it from the ground up.
I'm your host, Pam Schmiel, the editor behind hempbeveragenews.com. Today's guest is David Spang, founder of Coastal Green Wellness, a chain of hemp retail stores with locations in South Carolina and Georgia. David was one of the first entrepreneurs to open multiple hemp retail stores in South Carolina and has spent years working with lawmakers, helping educate them about the hemp industry as regulations have continued to evolve. Today, Coastal Green offers its own line of hemp products, including 9 Hemp beverages. And David has been a strong advocate for building a safe, regulated marketplace for consumers and businesses. In this episode, we talk about how he built his retail operation, the ongoing push for legalization and sensible regulation in South Carolina, and how his company is preparing for the potential November 12th changes that could dramatically reshape the hemp industry. Let's welcome David to the show. Just give everybody an overview of, where the laws, the cannabis or the hemp laws stand, like with South Carolina and Georgia, because those are the two states that you're operating in, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you have stores in South Carolina and in Georgia, is that right?
Yeah. So over the years, I've done retail for 9 years. We have physical brick and mortar retail outlets in South Carolina and Georgia. But we've also launched multiple brands. So we've dabbled in co-manufacturing and distribution as well for, with a big focus on our beverage brand.
Yeah, could you just give us an overview of South Carolina, what are you allowed to do?
Yeah, great question with an unfortunately convoluted answer because another role that I play with the many hats, polarizing there is I am also on the board of a trade association group, South Carolina Healthy Alternatives Association. We've been pushing for a comprehensive regulatory bill for the better part of 3 years. We had quite the fight, honestly, in this year's legislative session, and we were lucky to come out with an industry at all. It has been quite the learning process, but we are pushing for comprehensive regulation. So this is the rule book that is sensible and accessible from small business owners to large scale entities. So unfortunately, South Carolina has been left in a bit of a gray area where 2017 going into 18, the federal farm bill was enacted, put in some federal definitions rather than regulation. And then the Department of Agriculture federally did lay out some of their regulations for growing and manufacturing purposes. But as far as retail distribution, all not addressed on the federal level. So they left it up to each state to implement their own guidelines and regulations. South Carolina followed suit in the sense of the Department of Ag here laid out some basic guidelines on growing, manufacturing, and processing, but not really defining product categories, not really defining. There's no retail license, for example. There's no clear path to market from the state regulatory standpoint. So the market here, again, I hate to use the term gray area because it is unarguably legal, but there's not clear guidelines on how to operate and the oversight that is attached to most industries. So again, we've been pushing for 3 years to get retail licensing in place, establish packaging, testing, labeling, milligram amount guidelines, all the regulatory processes and framework that should be in place, we've been pushing for. And at the end of this legislative session, we almost ended up with, in my opinion, would be a very detrimental bill. It would have forced the entire hemp industry into the 3-tier model solely. So that means that the only place you'd be able to buy these products are licensed liquor stores. There are some, playing both sides and being fair, there are some advantages to that. But in my opinion, the disadvantages far outweigh the advantages. And we were able to, I hate to say we were able to stop the bill from going through, but it was that or put small businesses out of business. So the bill did not pass this year, and we're looking forward to next session to getting back on track with a comprehensive regulatory bill that allows small businesses, particularly on the retail side, to continue operation, but lays the foundation for all those guidelines and framework. So long
So
way of saying we have no
yeah,
regulations, but we're working.
yeah. But you don't even have a medical market, right?
No, so South Carolina does not have medical marijuana.
Right.
So your higher THC products, we do not have medical. We do not have any sort of recreational, obviously. We've had a medical bill submitted for a few years, I think 6 or 7, if I recall correctly. It stalled for a variety of reasons that, we could do a whole podcast on. But the main takeaway is no, we do not. Although I don't think we're far off. I think sometime in the next few years with this the FDA rescheduling marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 may have triggered something in the background in South Carolina. So we'll see what happens going into this upcoming session. But I expect to see some headway this session. It's just, will that uh, go into effect this year, next year, 3 years? It took Georgia 6 years to get their medical marijuana program. From the day the bill passed to the application process being open, it was a 6 year gap. So, yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen here.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, I mean, you're one of the last states to drop, really. What, there's like four
Yeah.
states or something that have no programs at all. Yeah. Okay, so you're basically operating on the hemp farm bill, that whole, like you said, the gray area. So those are your guidelines right now. There's been nothing else that's moving because I know North Carolina is trying to, there's something going on there right now. I'm going to talk to somebody in North Carolina, but I know, you know, they're trying to regulate in some way. And wait, oh, do they have a medical program? North
Yeah.
Carolina?
North
So they,
Carolina is not medical. Technically, they are 7 grams of marijuana or less is decriminalized. But
oh,
outside of that, no, they do not have a medical marijuana program.
okay, so
And
we're
it's
another.
funny, the main push for the restriction of hemp products in North Carolina is actually fueled by the argument for medical marijuana. It's an interesting dynamic in states that are competing for both because you have on one hand the entities that are pushing for medical marijuana and the money to be made off of that. They generally want to restrict the hemp industry because there is some crossover in the products, although it's usually lower potency for the most part. There are there are absolutely differences between the two without a doubt, but you usually have those two markets kind of competing for market share.
Yeah, in the end, also wonder how that might play out. Like if we all might go into that medical lane. Yeah, we don't know. Okay, I just kind of wanted to let everybody get that frame of what. Okay, and I know, well, Georgia has has the medical market, and they just, I know, announced you can do vapes or something, but so they also, as far as hemp goes, they're operating the same way you are, just around the hemp bill.
So yes, but actually in 2024, the end of 2024, October 2024, Bill 494, 424. Double check me on that one. 494, 424. October 2024, though, Georgia did pass a regulatory bill for their hemp industry. So in Georgia, my retail stores are licensed. You have to hold a license through the Department of Ag for wholesale, retail, and manufacturing. They have guidelines on packaging, milligram amounts. They have a decent amount of it's a solid program, I think, for the most part, in the state of Georgia. So Georgia has both. Georgia has their medical marijuana, higher potency, and then they have the lower potency hemp market, both regulated at the state level. So I think Georgia is an example where those markets actually exist, in terms of regulation side by side.
Oh, that's cool. And what's their cap? What did they put their cap at for the hemp market for
Uh,
milligram?
10 milligrams, 10
Oh,
milligrams per serving.
okay. Oh, well, that's decent. Okay. Thank God. All right. So that sounds like a good, pretty, I like the Georgia mark. So you started Coastal Green Wellness. That's how you started out in the CBD space, kind of. That's where you really entered this whole thing. And then you started making once the Farm Bill started making THC products? Is that kind of how it works?
So the Farm Bill actually redefined these strains that would have, even though they're very low in THC, high in CBD, they were considered, illegal federally. So in 2017, I started South Carolina's first dedicated CBD retailer. So I opened in 2017 a brick and mortar retail outlet when it was still a 1 year provisionary bill at the federal level. So we've really ridden the whole wave of the hemp industry. And quick bird's eye view. 17 and 18, it was all full spectrum CBD. There was no THC whatsoever being sold. And then the rise of Delta 8 THC kind of came about, which is considered a semi-synthetic cannabinoid. It's a conversion from CBD. So companies figured out you could take CBD isolate and convert it to Delta 8 THC. It's technically not traditional THC, which is Delta 9 THC. So it falls outside of the scope of that 0.3% limit, making it a legal form of THC under the hemp laws. And that really kickstarted, for better or worse, a large amount of products that are being sold in the hemp market, which, in my opinion, a good chunk of them do need to be regulated and restricted. I think that it stimulated the market in some ways I personally disagree with. And hence why we push for regulation. And yeah, we chose to focus on naturally occurring Delta 9 THC gummies. So when you grow CBD products, that little bit of natural THC that's there, we're extracting that out and putting that back in the product. So we launched a THC gummy line in early 2019. And then the beverage sector really started catching traction a few years ago, and we launched Nine Dot about 2 years ago, give or take. We actually had a concentrated version of a THC liquid, like a drink additive, under our gummy brand for a couple years prior, and to my surprise, the canned beverage line. Canned THC beverages caught such mainstream traction so early on. It honestly surprised me. That was not where my bets were lying, but nonetheless, it caught a lot of traction, and we moved that concentrate to Nine Dot and developed a can and a brand around that.
Wait, what gained traction? The drops that you put into the drinks, or the canned drinks?
And drinks specifically,
Oh,
because I went from expecting the hemp industry to kind of remain on the fringe. Just my personal, boots on the ground experience. When we were first trying to push our THC gummies wholesale, we were met with extreme hesitation. There's no way THC is legal. You explain that it's from hemp, it's under 0.3%. Here's an attorney's opinion. Here's why it's illegal. And then the canned beverages specifically flipped a switch in terms of the viewpoint from the mainstream retail outlets.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
All of a sudden they went, oh, we can sell that. And fast forward just 2 years, and I think the best polarizing example is this. If you would have told me 3 years ago that Target would be piloting THC products in store, I would have
Mhm.
I would have bet a substantial amount of money that is not going to be the case.
Mhm.
Fast forward 3 years, and here we have Target, I believe in Minnesota, is piloting, and maybe even some other stores, real mainstream retail outlets. In the South here, we have Lowe's Foods, other grocery chains, like large scale grocers are offering these products in store right now. So
Yeah,
the,
it's
the speed
crazy.
at which, yeah, the speed at which it went from a fringe portion of the cannabis industry to mainstream retailers really shocked me. And it's
Yeah.
the canned beverages that were the driving force behind that.
Yeah, you really saw all of a sudden it was just normal. It was shooting everywhere. Yeah, I know. It's been the catalyst that we kind of needed to get the whole industry going as far as people on the regulated side and things like that. Um, so are you vertically integrated? Are you farming, manufacturing, and doing everything?
No, man, we are not.
Okay.
I respect the farmers greatly. but they have their own battles, and it's not battles I personally am interested in facing. I've worked very closely with different farmers and breeders and extractors in the industry, and hats off for what they do, but not my forte, not the direction we're going to go. But I do like having a hands-on relationship with my suppliers, understanding my supply chain, from the farm to the shelf.
Yeah. Are you working with farmers in South Carolina and in Georgia or elsewhere? Like, do you?
Where, like for example, the beverage brand and most of my gummies come from Tennessee. So it's usually farms within Tennessee. Sometimes they're contracted out, but I have a great relationship with my manufacturer there who is doing, varying amounts of formulation and safety checking and stuff like that.
Okay. All right. So you're just you're working with one farmer. Yeah, Tennessee seems to have a lot of cultivation going on there. Okay. I thought North Carolina was also and South Carolina, they were big hemp farm. I mean, the whole South
So
is like
North Carolina definitely got some traction. I mean, I think in the Southeast, the top two are Tennessee and Kentucky in terms of acreage grown.
oh,
And you got some smaller people in Georgia, some in North Carolina. South Carolina's market really struggled. There is some confusion with the Department of Agriculture and the way they tried to enforce the few regulations we did have. I think made it really difficult for farmers. There's actually there was a big deal with I really wish I could remember his name right now. A farmer who was raided by SLED, South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. There's a whole lawsuit over it. I mean, it's a
oh,
story on its own worth looking into.
yeah.
It just did not make it easy on the supply chain for South Carolina farmers, in my opinion.
Okay.
So I think at one time, I think we were up to 70 something hemp growing licenses. I think we're
Oh,
down to like six in South Carolina right now. Yeah.
wow. Okay, that just tells you what the regulations are doing. Okay, yeah, okay. All right. So are you selling different products, different brands in your stores, or is it just your own products?
Yeah, so we sell a variety of different brands. Now we're really selective. A lot of shops you go into, you can see dozens and dozens and dozens of brands, let alone hundreds of different products. We're a lot more selective. Again, going back to like we like to know who these companies are, what their internal policies are. We independently lab screen them before putting them out.
Okay.
So if you go into my store right now, it's a little higher because we've expanded on the beverage side. Like beverage wise, we're probably carrying about a dozen brands. And then total in store, beverages aside, we're only carrying about, again, another dozen to 15 more. So we're pretty selective on who we carry. And then we have our three in-house brands. So way early on, we developed a CBD focus line to maintain that quality control. So we have our Coastal Green CBD. Coastal Green Wellness is the name of our storefront. Then we also have Dankadence, which is our gummy focused, more cannabis focused line, and then we have Nine Dot, which is our beverage focused line. So we do put an emphasis on our own three house brands, but again, total with beverages probably another 20 to 22.
Okay. And are so all these brands that are selling in these stores there, they're just from anywhere, God knows where, right? Just so many manufacturers out there just pumping out these whatever. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we are inundated with calls and emails and you name it, whatever distro or brands or I get distro catalogs that have 150 different products in it. And
Oh,
it again, it just goes back to the lack of regulation. Some states it's so easy to pop up shop, if you will, and become a gummy manufacturer or a vape manufacturer or what have you. But then there are some really, really great brands out there. We worked years with Boomy, great all women company, all women owned company in Brevard, North Carolina. They do chocolates and gummies. Really great people over there. Other brands like Chubbies and Snoozy. You have good people. Another great South Carolina brand, Carolina Dreaming. You have Canna Aid is great for the industry. So there's quite a list of really great companies out there who are doing right by the industry.
okay. And those are all hemp derived products. Yeah, obviously, because yeah, you don't can't get into that. Okay. Yeah. So are you also doing any sort of functional stacking in any of your beverages? Like, yeah, or not or anything, any of the products actually.
So we don't necessarily we get functional in terms of full spectrum of cannabinoids and terpenes. We get into a few additional ingredients, like for sleep, we have some gummies with L-theanine and like chamomile tea extracts and things like that. I do work with a small brand for functional mushrooms, like lion's mane and chaga and reishi, but we don't mix cannabinoids with those. We try and really separate the two. I've definitely seen some decent mushroom infused products, but the mushroom world is another one where the industry just ran wild, and there's a lot of psychoactive, psychedelic mushrooms with who knows what in them, all sorts of synthetic nonsense that are just trying to trick consumers.
Yeah.
That again, things I personally don't agree with, and there should probably be some guardrails in place to protect consumers.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. So are you in your stores, you were saying that you carry 12 beverage brands. Are you really trying to push like a regular beverage experience, like refrigerator walk-ins and, that kind of thing? Or I mean,
So we definitely have refrigerators in all the stores, and we try to give a wide but well curated selection. And I think the core takeaway with independent hemp retailers and part of their importance in the marketplace, going back to the battle in South Carolina, trying to push these products solely into liquor stores, the importance of an independent hemp retailer, even independent pharmacies who offer some of these hemp products, the core backbone of our business model from the brick and mortar retail standpoint has always been education, right? We educate, educate, educate. All of our staff is trained to ask questions. Like when you come into one of my stores and you say, "Hey, I would like a THC beverage. I would like a THC gummy." You don't get, "Here are your options. Here's how much they are." We're all trained. If they're not in our wellness member program, aka we don't know this consumer, then we ask, "Well, have you ever tried one before?" And if the answer to that is no, then we go on at least a 5 minute follow up of what to expect with these products, right? Delayed onset, liver enzyme variability. There's actually a big genetic variability to how sensitive you are to THC edibles. So you get a whole education about the consumption of these products following, a few questions from our team. And that is more what we try to emulate on a day by day basis for all of our consumers.
are you selling online as well?
We do e-commerce. Yep, we do direct to consumer e-commerce.
Okay. Are you selling in other stores besides yours?
Yes, we have mainly we are with other independent hemp retailers such as myself. In the Atlanta market, we've gotten a strong foothold with the beverage brand specifically, and we are in a lot of the neighborhood markets, a lot of your neighborhood shops. On top of the independent hemp retailers, we're in a couple of wine and beer shops. We are in your non-alcoholic bottle shops. We're in a few of those in Atlanta. So yes, we are.
Wow, Atlanta sounds like it has quite the hemp beverage program going.
Yeah,
It's not,
Atlanta.
yeah, because edibles.com, whatever, the edibles company. So that's really cool. So you're right, there's so many different options because in other states, it's really just the three-tier system, like the liquor stores, those kind of options are all that people really have. Um, but so you're not working with distributors then. You're just self-delivering or direct delivering or
Variety of both. So in Atlanta, we are working with a distribution company. There's some close friends of ours, Key Distribution. They also own a kombucha brand, Key Kombucha. Great people running that company over there, which is why we've worked with them. So they distribute in the Atlanta market because moving beverages independently is very hard. Moving gummies independently, a lot easier. Moving beverages independently, is a lot more challenging.
so as far as distributors, what kind of tips would you give anybody who's starting to work with distributors in this whole space? I know they're not really accepting maybe it's the liquor stores that really aren't, kind of holding back now, don't want to take on any new brands. But how do all these other like little stores, like you're saying, there seems so many independents that you're in. How are they looking at the November 12th ban? What is everybody saying to you?
Retailers such as myself are remaining very optimistic, where more of your traditional large scale retailers are a lot more hesitant, especially with existing stock. And going back to your alcohol distributors have really paused any onboarding. I mean, it's a combination because on one hand, there's a there is a November ban deadline coming up, but at the same time, the market went from like four canned beverages, not one of my own. There was four or five early entrepreneurs who penetrated this marketplace to 300 within the span of a year.
Yeah.
The market was absolutely overrun with beverages popping up. I think you're going to see the market self-correct going into the future. And I think it caused a lot of hesitation with alcohol distributors because they're just getting flooded with brands who wanted to be picked up because I think everyone thinks that, oh, all I have to do is get into an alcohol distributor and I'm set. And I think my advice there is that's not the case. It seems like the dream. It seems like the perfect outcome because they'll buy a couple of pallets. And yes, that is a media business. It's a media boost to a small business, but they want to see sell through. They want to see store support. They want to see store tastings. They want to see giveaways. Your 30% ish margin that you're making with them, you're expected to support the sell through rates in those areas dramatically. And it's not easy to survive, even with a large scale manufacturer, because their sales team can be great. They can get you some shelf space. But if you're not doing the store support, the retailer support in a variety of avenues, your brand's going to struggle. It just is. And you might get that initial burst, but then they're going to drop you. And, it's not, it's not the magical whirlwind that I think a lot of brands may think it is. And it still requires a ton of support. It's great infrastructure and should be a goal, but you really need the full market approach.
Yeah, I just spoke to somebody in the Florida market and he's not going that route yet either. They're just new in the market. They've only been in for a couple of months, but it sounds like what they're expecting from you and what they want you to put in as extra money for marketing is just cuts right into everything. I mean, the cost, yeah, just everything you just said. He had just told me. Yeah, I'd go for other routes somehow and start with some non-obvious places. Yeah, that sounds like the best plan. But it's kind of interesting in a state like South Carolina where there's so many hemp stores. It's not just like these convenience stores, but like these really, wellness shops like you guys have, you know, how like that won't be allowed if November 12th.
It's a tough situation because if you look at the November ban, which I'm choosing to remain optimistic, I think we're going to get a fix in between now and November. But you also have to consider the fact that South Carolina was pushing this three-tier model. It would have shut down every independent hemp retailer. It would have forced them to become a liquor store, which creates hurdles in the sense of um, one, if you can comply with local zoning regulations, because one of my stores is across the street from a liquor store, so I can't get liquor. Another one of my stores is across the street from a park. I would not be approved for a liquor license there. So out of my three stores I have here, only one out of the three would comply. If I can get liquor, then you're also a little bit of a convoluted answer, but just the restrictions that it creates in order to maintain that it creates an almost impossible environment for an independent hemp retailer to survive. So you really are, even in a regulated bill, you're stripping it away from my opinion, the people who built this industry, took all the risks, put consumers first and did everything that we're supposed to do, taking it away from them, shutting them down and handing it over to the established liquor store industry. And that's just we can't have that.
We can't, I know. So that's kind of what stopped the South Carolina legislators at one point realizing you have so many of these types of stores that are really like legit good, well-intentioned.
Yeah, you have great representatives like Gil Gatch, a House member, Greg Ford, JA, just so many great House members that stood up for us put a stop to this bill, because it went all the way down to a subcommittee. I mean, it was not even the 5 yard line; it was the 1 yard line. We were 1 yard away
Oh, no,
from
that's
this
good.
bill going into effect in South Carolina, and I mean, literally could not have been closer. It was stopped, which we were extremely thankful for, and we will be back at the table immediately going into next session, pushing for the regulation, because that was one of the things a lot of the regulators said was, well, we're not going to get a chance to regulate this industry. We need to do it now while we have the chance. But myself and a handful of other business owners in the state have been pushing for 3 years to get these regulations done.
Same old story. Yeah. Okay. So really, you're setting up a hemp market. You're setting up a regulated hemp market in South Carolina. And, they've been pushing against having medical, but you or a rec market, but you've got it. It's like they can't stop it. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you're not going to give us that. Well, we're doing hemp. So, and you've already gone ahead and yeah. So, okay. So we're going to just be hopeful that November 12th is basically there's going to be something that comes, because I don't know what else you could do.
Yeah, depending on the economic impact reports we're looking at, the hemp industry is bigger than the marijuana industry. To think that you're just going to pull the rug out from 98% of the businesses come November.
I know.
And, I don't know if you've seen, but the executive order to reschedule cannabis also asked them to set up framework for Medicare and Medicaid coverage of these products at the federal level. It goes completely against what the current administration is pushing for on the federal level. So on one hand, you're going to ban 98% of the products while trying to allow Medicare and Medicaid to cover
CMS
these
program. Yeah, I know. It's like that alone, like the president is pushing for that, and then you're stopping it. Yeah, I know. So that, I mean, he is trying to say, okay, guys, so yeah, something, hopefully, I really hope so much. And wait, did you tell me, are you guys selling in other states besides Georgia and South Carolina, the drinks?
We have a couple small retailers in North Carolina, and then we do direct to consumer throughout a lot of different states, outside of different state restrictions.
Okay, and do you find that your beverages or your gummies or whatever you sell more online than you do in the store? Is that like a big business? Because that's another thing that's going to get hit.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have 5 retail stores, but 25% of my business is e-commerce, 75%. So e-commerce, if you count it as an independent store, is arguably my best store,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the market share is a lot wider, but it's not a drastic multiple or anything.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. This was fantastic. Great insights. Really appreciate it.